Hi, welcome as folks are coming on the line. We're going to start recording this and we'll be posting it to YouTube after the fact. So want to welcome everybody and give a few more minutes for people to get signed on.
Good morning, Devin. Catherine, are you okay with us introducing ourselves?
Absolutely, please do
Okay.
so. Yeah, I'll do a little, just a
Yeah.
bit about the series, but
Sure.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. As a point of curiosity, I have the sharing paused. Do you just see the title screen right now?
Correct.
Okay, great. I'm just confirming that you can still see. Okay, great.
Yep, you got it.
Hi, everyone. Folks are still getting signed on. It's just a little bit before noon, so we're going to give folks another minute or two to get logged in, and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll just give it another minute. I saw a few more people were registering and trying to get signed in here. So, Randy, if you're okay, maybe going till about 5 after, just give folks a chance to sign in and then.
Sure, no
start.
problem. I can
Okay.
tell you that I just received my notice at 12 noon. Now, I had already logged on a different way,
Okay.
but I think folks are coming on late because the notice is being received late.
Yeah, I only received a couple registrations today.
Okay.
I know I resent a few. I think yours was definitely one I resent.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's really about how you're
yeah.
triggered to have a reminder.
Okay.
I think it's the way this system of registration works.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, we are at 5 after. I will admit folks as they come in. So if it's all right, we'll go ahead and get started. If you and April are okay.
That would be great. Thanks, Catherine.
All right, sounds good. I just want to welcome everybody. My name is Catherine Kilgore. I'm the Criminal Justice Advisory Board Administrator for Dauphin County. And today is part 2 of, or I guess the second presentation of our Reentry Subcommittee Criminal Justice Connect webinar series. And we're really excited to have this installment. All of these topics were picked from members of the community. And today it's going to be about trauma, resiliency, and kind of that we'll get to in the next presentation a little bit more about that intersection with criminal justice. But we thought foundational training provided by our Human Services Director and April Ledick, a programming administrator, that we'd be able to kind of kick this series off. So turn it over to Randy and April to introduce themselves, and very glad everyone is here. We are going to be recording this presentation and it will be available to YouTube later. You will not be able to see the resiliency video if you try to watch it again online. We'll have to edit that out because of copyright, but bear with us as we go back and forth, and we'll play the video and go on. So turning it over to Randy and April for some introductions.
Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon. I think many of you who I see on the screen, I certainly know, and I really appreciate your time. For those of you who I don't know, I look forward to having a dialogue this afternoon. We're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. If you turn on your videos, a good old-fashioned thumbs up, or hey, I have a question, or I don't understand is fine. If you are more high tech than I am and you can use all these chat features that we have available, April's got your back on that. So we'll work together. I'm the low tech one, April's the high tech one, and certainly Catherine trumps us all. So this will be a team effort. I've been with the county now about 27 years in a variety of capacities. And I can tell you that when I learned of this work around adverse childhood experiences and the resilience film, it really reinvigorated an opportunity to share as much information with as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So I am really happy to be sharing this information again today, and I'm thrilled to have my colleague April Rudick joining me. So I'll let April introduce herself.
Thank you, Randy. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is April Rudick. In my current role, I'm the Director of Human Service Initiatives here for the Dauphin County Human Services Director's Office. And if you don't know what that means, that's okay. It really means a lot of things. But really how it plays a role into what we're working on today is the cooperation and collaboration across the different service systems, and including the criminal justice partners that we work with. And so I have many, many years of experience with trauma, mental health, substance use, and similar as a licensed clinical social worker. And so when Randy asked if I wanted to be involved with resilience and ACEs and how we could continue to support the community as a whole, I was like, absolutely, sign me up. Tell me when and where. And so that's what we've been kind of doing. And so thank you for having us today as an opportunity to continue to spread this message across the community.
Okay, so we're gonna start off on slide 3, Catherine. And this is, again, gonna start that interactive part because I don't wanna hear myself speak all afternoon. So just by way of the chat box or in your video, how many of you have heard of the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study? Okay. Thanks for the old-fashioned thumbs up. I like it. All right, great. This is exciting. So we collectively have done this presentation dozens and dozens of times. I've literally seen this film about 50 times. And this is the first group that I'm presenting to that have heard of the study with this percentage. So that's a fantastic place to start. I also believe in being safe for everybody first. So I just want to remind folks that April is here with multiple hats on, and part of that role is as a licensed clinical social worker. So this information can become uncomfortable, particularly when watching the film. As I've said, I've seen it dozens and dozens of times, and to be quite honest, there are still parts of it that are uncomfortable for me to watch. And so if you're more than a little uncomfortable, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for across human services. And in particular this afternoon, April is on standby for whatever consultation or conversation you may need. So she'll put her information in the chat box, and don't hesitate to, have that dialogue even, this afternoon as you're participating. We also want to invite you at any time to reach out to us. If you have some ideas about how we can share this information more broadly or in a different way, we definitely want to hear your ideas, because we've only presented now to about 2,500 people. And since we have 278,000 people in this county, we have a long way to go. So I think everybody needs this information. Next slide, please. So I just want to touch on the original study, because a lot of what you will see in the film does focus on the original study. And remember, this was done, the study actually started in 1995. It was published in 1998. This was a very large study done by Kaiser Permanente, which is a major healthcare network in California, 17,000 people. All of these people had health insurance, and most had beyond a high school education. The focus areas of the study were in 3 categories. The first was abuse, and that included both physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. The second category was around neglect, both physical or emotional neglect. And the third category in today's world is much expanded, but the basics in 1998 included mental illness, an incarcerated relative, a mother treated violently. Today, we all know that could be anyone treated violently by their partner or significant other, substance abuse, and divorce. We also today would include separation, one-parent households. So the definitions certainly have changed over the decades, as they should. They've evolved and grown, but this was the original study in 1998. This was the focus. Next slide, please. So there are a great expansion across the country about other adversities that our children are experiencing. And I'm going to focus a bit on children today, but as you all know, children, including myself, grow up, we get older, we become adults, and these items still impact our brains and our bodies even as we become adults. So foster care, if someone has the experience of foster care, that certainly is an adversity, just the process of going into that type of system. Witnessing violence, bullying, severe weather, war, poverty. We added COVID-19 in there. That is quite impactful, particularly when you layer it on all of the other adversities that could be happening within households. English as a second language, transient populations, deployed family members, serious medical conditions, or death of a family member. The ones noted with the red asterisk, they were included in a study that Philadelphia did. I believe the year was 2013. It was quite an expanded study versus the 1998 Kaiser Permanente study. But these are the items that Philadelphia examined, and they did a random phone survey type of study with some interesting results. And you can Google the Philadelphia ACE study and find lots of data around that. It's not the only study happening across the country. You'll see in the film, there are many things happening in Washington and Oregon and Ohio and various places across the country. I have found, utilizing what other areas of the country are doing, I found it very, very valuable for what we can do here and what we are doing here. The decisions that we make, what our policies look like, what are our on-the-ground practices, how is that happening day in and day out across our human service departments. I find it very valuable. So you may want to consider checking some of that information out. Next slide, please. So this is a brain scan. And this is an example of brain changes that occur. In this particular case, this is a PET scan of a neglected and abused 3-year-old. This child was a Romanian refugee. And you will see on the right, you will see the brain scan of that 3-year-old refugee. On the left, that is a brain scan of an average 3-year-old child. I'd like us to focus on a couple things in this scan. And when I do this presentation with my dear friend, Dr. Ellen Smith, she certainly goes into more detail because she is the physician, but you're gonna get my version today, so bear with me. So the left side, you will see a lot of red and yellow. That average child developing as a 3-year-old The red parts are really important. That means there's a lot of activity. You'll see on the right scan, oh, that's brilliant, thank you. On the right scan, you'll see there's a lot less red in that scan. And you'll see two of the circle areas, those white circles in both of those images. This is a real critical concern because this is the connection between the temporal lobes and the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe in children or adults, by the way, is our impulse control. The ability to discern right from wrong and control those impulses. And I'm going to apologize. I forgot to say this in the beginning. We're having some significant construction on our roof. We're getting some new HVAC systems. April and I are both in the office, and if you see us cringing or looking to the ceiling, it's because it sounds like it's going to come through. I know in my head we will be okay. Nothing's coming through, but it's very loud. So I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background. I'll try not to flinch. So what's concerning about this is when you have neglect and abuse, these neural pathways in the brain are interrupted and the same development does not occur. It doesn't mean it can't get better when removed from those situations, but as it is on the screen, you see the difference, and this child is 3. What happens when we multiply that by 10 years, and now we have a 30-year-old without some of those connections in the brain? Next slide, please. So this is the slide that when I first learned about ACEs, by the way, that was in the early 2000s when I was working in the juvenile justice system. And we knew about the study. There was a whole presentation from the Juvenile Court Judges Commission about the study. The challenge for us back then, though, is we didn't quite know what to do with it. And April's going to talk to you in a couple minutes about positive childhood experiences and how they mitigate some of the adversities. But this is the slide that really impacted me personally because I happen to have an ACE score of 6. And when I first took the ACE score for myself, by the way, that's 6 out of 10, okay? So when I first took it for myself and came to the realization that I, in fact, had an ACE score of 6, and then I saw this information about my life expectancy, this is one of those things that, for me, absolutely changed what I was doing and how I was doing it. Because I didn't go through all those things in childhood to live 20 less years than the average adult. Right? I'm beyond what has happened in childhood. I certainly want the rest of my life to be long and prosperous. So this factor in terms of how those adversities have affected my future health and, quite frankly, my longevity really has made an impact. So I'm going to turn it over to April unless anybody has questions right now of me.
All right, next slide. So Randy just gave a brief overview of the risk factors, or the ACEs, and what we know now, which was less understood, which is really why there were a percentage of individuals that had the high ACE scores that ended up with a normal development or good emotional health as adults. And what we know now is that it's because of the protective factors, for example, conflict resolution skills and physical or spiritual or emotional health and the competence that occurred as children, and success at school, and the strong social supports and connections. Kids who experience many of what we call PACEs, and we'll see that on the next slide in a moment, learn to trust and support the connections, and those connections are linked to a healthy adult mental health. Next slide. So some of those PACEs, as we call them, PCES, or positive childhood experiences, during childhood become adults who know how to seek support, know how to get the care that they need, and those that have improved symptoms of any mental health conditions. And some of those PACEs, there's 7 childhood experiences listed here that are linked to healthy, good mental health in adults, including having been provided, clear structure, age-appropriate interactions with an adult. And what we've said is it really could be any adult. Obviously, it is best if that is a household member, a parent. However, any adult that provides that stability, someone that they can reach out to and talk to, that can mitigate the toxic stress that's caused by the childhood traumas and the higher ACE scores, can impact their growing brains, resulting in positive outcomes. And you'll see the 7 categories here, and it's usually conducted similar to the way the ACEs score is conducted, which is you would get a score, so to speak, of a 0 to 7 scale, realizing that the opposite of the things that are problematic are the things that can cause resilience and positive behaviors and healthy adults. And again, it says things like had at least 2 non-parent adults who showed interest in you, and that would of course increase your score. So that could be a coach, that could be a teacher, that could be a neighbor, that could be grandma. And we know that from our experience with children and youth, for example, there are many, many, many more family members raising those children who have negative childhood experiences. And so if those non-parent adults have showed interest, have spent the time playing with, assuring the safety of, and protecting the kids in the home, they can still end up becoming productive, healthy citizens. Next slide.
So this is just one aspect of the impact of these positive childhood experiences on the adversities that children encounter. And I love this slide, even though it's a little messy. So bear with me, we're gonna go through it piece by piece. So the yellow line that's at the top of the chart, that yellow indicates that these individuals have between 4 and 8 ACEs. And remember, the ACE score is out of 10. So this is a score of 4 to 8. And these are individuals who are functioning but dealing with depression, and this is self-reported depression. And so you see here on the chart in yellow, the higher, even though it's a relatively high ACE score, the more they have positive childhood experiences, it actually lowers the rate of their feelings of depression. So those with only 1 or 2 positive childhood experiences and ACEs, they're at 59.7 reported depressive episodes. If they have 6 or 7 positive childhood experiences, that rate drops to 20. That's a significant drop. And we can go down through here. The gray line are individuals with 2 to 3 adversities in childhood. Again, 53.3, it drops to 16 because of the higher positive childhood experiences. I think of it like a balancing act. We can't, although we want to prevent adversities in childhood, particularly early childhood development. But we know in our society, we probably won't prevent all of them, even though we're trying. But if we can balance those adversities with those positive elements that April discussed for every person, and again, I'm talking a lot about children, but if we apply these same principles to the adults that we serve in our community, they too need those positive people, experiences, all of those things in their life, regardless of how old they are. April and I just spent a couple hours with our area agency on aging this morning. And the folks we're serving in aging definitely have some pretty high ACE scores, and their health and their well-being is quite evident around that. Who can we connect them with? That was most of our discussion this morning. Who else can get involved? Who can help? Oftentimes it's a relative, it may be a neighbor, it may be a friend. April, you want to jump in on that?
I just wanted to add that kids who experience this support and connectedness certainly can develop into adults that have better mental health, but also they end up becoming adults who seek that support as well. So what we find is that individuals who didn't have the supports that were necessary in childhood don't know to or how to or choose to seek the support into adulthood. And the converse is also true. If they've located someone that they can connect to and trust as a child, they will then seek the support of another family member, partner, friend, or some person in their circle for that support as adults.
That's a great point. I also want to bring your attention to the blue line at the bottom of this chart, because these are individuals with no adverse childhood experiences, yet you'll see they still experience depressive episodes. But as you see the line go across to the right side of the page, those depressive episodes are also reduced because of positive experiences. So whether somebody has ACEs or not, it's really critical that we involve positive aspects. For one of our older adults we were talking and discussing about today, you know, for him, he needs to walk and he needs to get outside and he needs to be able to do things independently. And that's really, really difficult right now during the pandemic due to his needs. So we were strategizing about how we could do that safely and in when and in what context. So any questions about that slide? Okay, so I just want to pause a second. We're going to move on to the resilience film, I believe, but if you go to the next slide, Catherine. So as you're watching the film, I'd like you to consider a couple things. How have ACEs affected your life, either personally or someone you may know? And specifically, how have ACEs affected the lives of the people you serve in whatever realm you're serving them? I'm really interested, you know, this is a time for us to really think creatively. I mean, I would hope that we were doing this always, but we've certainly had to be more creative in our work during the pandemic. So think about how ACEs, and I'll just give you one example. So I was raised, for the most part, by my grandparents. And I was raised with an aunt who I consider more like a sister, and she was adopted. So we were quite close in age. She has had a tremendous amount of neglect and abuse in early childhood. She did not reside with my grandparents until she was 5 or 6, and they could not legally adopt her until she was 8. She was living in another state with other relatives in a horrendous situation. She exhibits behaviors that many people would consider really quite abnormal. And I want to use one example. She has a tendency to laugh and giggle quite hysterically at things she maybe shouldn't from the average person's perspective. So for example, if she is in a high stress situation, maybe being pulled over by a police officer for speeding, which she does have a tendency to do. We talk about that all the time. If she is in a courtroom setting, she may be laughing very inappropriately when the judge is speaking. It is not because she is being disrespectful. It's actually how she copes in very stressful situations. So is the behavior inappropriate? Absolutely, from the average perspective. One of the things that we did as a family very early on, when she became an adult, we all would kind of talk out with her what's going to happen next, because we knew it would stress her out. And so that preparation really helped a lot when she was in those stressful situations, because she was cognizant about the fact that her laughing was not appropriate in that setting, and therefore she could think about it. But it's a delicate balance, because we didn't want her so stressed out that she couldn't she couldn't function or had a very flat response. So that's just one example. Over the years, I've seen lots of people laugh in courtrooms. Oftentimes it's a response to stress and not a response to the person speaking, although it is very disrespectful and can be interpreted very differently. So my advice is start to get to know who we're working with, and have some dialogue and preparation about what are the next steps, what's going to happen in the courtroom, or whatever stressful situation they're going to encounter. Sometimes the stressor is just having people in their home. We talked a lot about that this morning, the level of stress of our older adults when we must come to their home to see if they're okay. So with that, I'd like to know if you have any questions before we start the film.
I'm not seeing any in the chat box either.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start the resilience film. We are going to run it the whole way through. It's about an hour in duration. And please jot down notes, ask questions. We're hoping to have a great dialogue when we come back together. So thank you for your time so far. And here's the resilience film.
Quick point of housekeeping. I'm going to show 2 quick slides here as we're getting it set up so you can see some resources. And I'll just have this up for a second with some phone numbers. And then one more slide about this training.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, for that reminder. This training is available at any time to anyone, and it doesn't have to be April or I or Dr. Ellen Smith who present it. Some of you just on this conference are very well skilled in presenting this information. We purchased the resilience film a couple years ago with the rights to show it publicly as long as it's within Dauphin County, because it was purchased for Dauphin County. And we are happy to loan that out to anybody who wants to have these very important, what I consider very important facilitated discussions with our community at large. Thank you, Catherine.
Absolutely. And now I'm going to pause my share, and as soon as we come back, we'll be showing the movie.
Great, thanks.
Come on.
Catherine, I think we have a volume issue.
Okay, I have the video as loud as I can make it in the system, and
We still have no volume.
Okay, I'm gonna try one more time. I unplugged my headphones. I'm gonna try this one more time. See if this works.
No, Catherine, sorry. That did not work either.
We all like to think of childhood as
There we go. Whatever you just did, we're getting some.
Okay, I do have one other option. It might take just a moment to,
There was something you did and we had sound for a few words.
yeah, I muted myself. Let me see if that works again.
No, sorry.
All right, everyone, give me just a minute. I'm going to reinstall this quick. So we'll pause here
Sure.
quickly.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay.
While she's doing that, any dialogue or discussion from anybody? Are we really out here alone?
There were a couple folks who mentioned that they'd heard of ACEs in the past. I'm curious if that was in their professional roles or elsewhere. There were a couple people who put in the chat box that they had heard of it, and there were a couple people shaking their heads when you asked that question. Has anyone seen the film before or have any awareness of it?
I had seen it before. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that Randy Yeager and Dr. Ellen Smith came to League of Women Voters.
Yes, we did. Yes, I do remember that. Good
Yeah,
to see you.
good to see you. And at the time, I was pretty worried about making sure everybody else was okay. So I'm looking forward to seeing the film again, that I can just really focus in on it. But it, despite my being uncomfortable that evening, the film made a tremendous impression. And I can see, well, among a number of my contemporaries and friends, how that those experiences make a difference, and also how positive interactions can really help. So thank you for being here.
Darlene, I appreciate that very much. And now that I was looking at you as you were speaking, you do look very familiar, and that's why, because I met you before. So it's great to see you. Do you know how you see someone and you think, where do I know them from?
All the time.
Yep, yep. Good to see you.
Randy and April, this is Ashley. I more so my professional, but I knew through personal as well, and even in school with some research I've done. And I know Randy's familiar with this, but we did, when we started the crisis intervention team training here in Dauphin County for law enforcement, there is a section for youth and trauma that I teach, and we go over ACEs. We actually did show this video for the first 2 classes, but because it is a DVD and technology with where we've been, it's just been easier for me to pull up an ACEs video off of YouTube. So I've done that for the last 2 trainings. But I start off with the icebreaker of giving the officers the ACE questionnaire to fill out. And I have yet to actually have, outside of probation, because probation has taken this training, but take them out of it, all of the police officers, I have yet to have a police officer that has heard of the ACEs or has taken the questionnaire until they go through the training. So that's just kind of an interesting fact for you.
And thank you, Ashley. That certainly speaks to the fact that we need to get this information out in any way possible. And again, we're going to have to get really creative. So I'll need everybody's help on this video conference to do that. So thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? So did you ever, I'll just pick on myself. So back when I was a probation officer in the mid-90s, and I was serving individuals who were alleged or adjudicated delinquent, one of the things that I regularly said to the folks that I was serving was something I would never say today. And what I used to say was, what were you thinking? And the reason I would never say that today is for individuals who have high ACE scores, or just take the adolescent brain with 0 ACEs. Sometimes, because of normal brain development, individuals and young people in particular are not able to think through a scenario and conclude what you and I as adults may conclude. So that was really a very ridiculous question for me to ask the young people that I was serving back then, because I was asking them to do something that they may not have the capacity to do. Not that they don't have the capacity to think, but the reason I was asking that question is, didn't you think about the consequences of your action? And the answer simply is no, they weren't thinking about consequences. They were thinking about the immediacy of the situation. So I would ask us to take my failure back then and think about how we have any interaction or conversation with not only individuals we're serving, but with our fellow family and friends. How we ask the question, even though there needs to be sometimes difficult conversations, how we go about that interaction is really critical to be able to get to some solutions that are viable. All right, Catherine.
All right, I have IT on the line, and we are going to try this and see if the setting change worked. So give us 1 second. Tell me what or if you can hear.
Okay. I cannot hear anything.
We all like to think of childhood
There we go.
as this time of joy and innocence. But I mean, for many of us, it's just not
It's
true.
a little low for my hearing, but maybe others are having a better result.
Yeah, I would say for everybody, make sure the volume on your computer is turned up as high as it can be. I have mine as high as I can make it.
Yeah, mine's at 100, but I'm still having trouble. Am I the only one having trouble hearing? Okay.
This is the biggest public health discovery we've ever seen. It blew my mind, just blew my mind. We didn't know that all of these kind of problems have a common cause. There was this incredible gee whiz effect. Adverse childhood experiences cause heart disease, lung disease, and cancer.
So Catherine, some folks just can simply not hear.
It's on your heart. It's on your DNA.
Yeah, it looks like that this is as loud as I can get it on this system. I have the system settings. I don't know, John, is there any other? Yeah, I'm cranked up as loud as I can get it on this computer. I would recommend if you have headphones available, if you have them, to plug them into your system. That will help with sound on presentations like this. I don't know if folks have those available. Yeah, it is turned up as loud as possible on my computer as we're playing it, but I would say try headphones if you have them available. Give those a plug in and see if you can hear better. I'll rewind it again. We'll give it one shot.
Catherine, may I suggest a couple things? Because I am concerned that folks will not be able to hear. I know I can't. So if folks cannot hear, I will work with Catherine and hopefully IT, and we will certainly run this video for you again at a different time, because I mean it's critical that this is shared. And many of you, I'm looking at the chat box, cannot hear at all. And I know it's really, really low. I think part of what I'm hearing is because I've watched it 50 times, I actually could read it for you verbatim. So we will absolutely, if you cannot hear, we will do this in the future, in the near future, and run it again for you. My apologies today that it is not working. And then I would just ask, is there any other solutions from IT that we could do if we took a 10-minute break?
I'm checking on this, Randy. Give me one
Thank
second.
you. Sure, thanks. Catherine, I'm not sure if you can hear me because I know you are multitasking, but Amy has a good suggestion that I wouldn't know about. Amy Mills said, try clicking the arrow next to the microphone on Zoom and clicking the same as speaker.
All right, give me 1 second here.
Thank you, Amy.
I don't see the microphone setting here.
I see there's two there. It says for microphone, select a microphone, same as system, or select a speaker, same as system. I don't know which one of those two things she's recommending, but
I just selected same as system. I'm going to try this one more time. And I updated one other setting that I could find that was volume. Can give it one more shot.
Thanks, Catherine. No volume that I can hear, Catherine.
Okay, that's unfortunate. We checked ahead of time. We thought everything was playing appropriately. Obviously, that was not the case. So my apologies to everyone. I thought we had this all set and ready to go based on all the settings. They all appeared to be set the way they needed to be. So those, I apologize for that.
So Catherine, how about if we go back to the PowerPoint and at least finish that out with hopefully some involved discussion from our participants, and then absolutely we will figure out this volume challenge and reschedule the film viewing.
I am working to get that set now. Give me one moment.
Take your time, take your time. I know it's, I couldn't do these IT things. I can tell you that. I can't do the tech part.
Catherine sounds different since when she was talking earlier. So something definitely happened. I just don't know. No, I think it's hard to do it if I don't have it in front of me, you know?
So some of you I know have seen the film because I presented it to you here in your role at the county. So I guess I would ask the question, how ACEs and the film has impacted your work since you have seen it.
Randy, I can at least speak to the conversations that we have in CIT training regarding this. And,
Yeah.
you know, after we watch the film and do the questionnaire and kind of, you know, what does this mean to officers? And I can even relate this to just even my work too, previous in here. But I tend to kind of talk to them on like, it's not more about like why you did what you did. It's kind of what happened to you that could be contributing factors. So I always just kind of tell the officers to kind of keep that in mind, because when you're interacting with someone, and I do it just in my everyday work too, is, you know, you look at the behaviors and that might cause some frustration and, you know, what's going on, but kind of approaching it as you're approaching someone and you just don't know their story. You don't know, you know, what happened to them, good or bad. So you always try to keep that in the back of your mind whenever you're approaching it. So, you know, that's way, at least for me, and not maybe for everyone, but it kind of gives an understanding of, okay, they're displaying these behaviors, but there could be a story behind this that I don't know.
And Ashley, that is a really excellent point about someone's individual story. And I can tell you personally, depending on who is asking me the question and how they're asking it, I may not share the story, or I may share a portion of the story, which certainly doesn't describe who I am fully as a human. But, and the reason I bring that up is it's not that all of us are not working really hard to make sure we have an appropriate level of history and understanding about the people we are serving. But I would invite all of us to consider that sometimes we need to keep asking questions, particularly when things are not going well. Continue to open that door to hear from the individual's perspective, regardless of how they tell it to us. Hear about what they think about their situation and really put them in the driver's seat, because oftentimes there'll be what they may consider, or I may consider, a really small piece of information, but that small piece of information could shed a whole new light on the entire circumstance. I remember very early on serving a young man who, his mother told me when he was a fourth grader that he was hit by a vehicle, and she and he both shared that it was no big deal. He was hit by a car, he didn't have any injuries, he had a bruise on his arm, and that was about it. Well, years later, when he was quite deeply involved in our juvenile justice system, because of pursuing some of those conversations multiple times in different ways, it was discovered he actually had a traumatic brain injury. And that significantly impacted his behavior when I encountered him at 15. And so even though he was a fourth grader and had this seemingly, accident that he didn't have any physical harm from his perspective. He actually had a brain injury. So keeping those conversations open, keeping the door open, and remembering that we only know what we know at the moment. There may be more to discover in any family or individual we're serving.
Randy, this is Devin. With some of the stuff you were saying in regards to that too, what I've had in my experience when I was a dual in a different county, I had the dual caseload of juvenile delinquency, juvenile dependency, and it was in that county. We really used this one for the parents to understand their own trauma and experience, and then also for the kids. And we would do group sessions with them to go through different things, be able to talk and work through. And the kids alone being able to understand that, see that, and be able to speak about it really helped them move through. And then working with juvenile placements, I had a few girls that did trauma therapy counseling. And with that, they were able to get on understanding of different stuff going on and why certain things, they might see things differently because of some of the stuff they experienced through their childhood.
That is a really good point, Devin. And I would love to talk with you more about your experience and how we could bring some of that work into what we do here in this county. And that reminded me of something I wanted to talk about related to the pandemic. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because we all are having to monitor temperatures. I think I get my temperature taken about 3 times a day at various locations, which is great. But we have a couple types of thermometers, but most of them are handheld. And some of them resemble the form, certainly not the function or the color, but they remind you of the form of a firearm. And so for those who have an experience of violence, whether it's on the street or domestic violence that involve the firearm, holding an object to someone's forehead, even though it's a benign temperature assessment, can be really difficult for a lot of people. And so we changed quickly our practice at our children and youth department because of that. We now have a way to do thermometer checks using the wrist. So just think about that and apply that to Devin's point, the broader understanding, whether it's the parents' understanding, the children's understanding about these effects of trauma. Let's take a look broadly at what we're doing on a daily basis. I mean, we're just trying to keep people safe, taking temperatures, but the way we do that matters.
I think, it just goes on to what we've said about a few other things, which is asking for permission to do things. And sometimes we think, well, it's our job and we have this right to do that, but you don't know what the impact is on the person that we're serving, whether that's another professional that we've encountered, or one of the clients that we serve or consumers so I think it just goes to show, like, a lot of it is how we present the information to individuals. And sometimes, and this is something I work on as a professional every day, not always necessarily directly related to ACEs, but that we have to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the client, the consumer, the other professional we're working with, and not our own. So sometimes the language that we use is about what it is that they will hear or learn to accept or understand, not about what I think is the right way to say the thing. I reread emails and I will oftentimes go back over in my head, oh, okay, now I can see how that was miscommunicated when I said this verbal thing. I didn't necessarily think about it before I said this verbal thing. And now how can I change the way that I interact with this individual in the future so that there's more clarity, because their brain may not work the same way that mine does.
Really good point, April. And one of the things that, I find it the hardest thing I do every day is communication, because I have to take into account what is the perception of the person I'm communicating with. And I specifically say communicating with versus to, because if you want results, we surely know that, I don't know if you're anything like me, if you demand I do something, if you direct I do something, if I'm not a part of that plan, it's it'll happen, but it may not happen in the highest quality kind of way. But if you include me in that process and, you know, ask for what I'm thinking about a particular solution, then I'm happy to jump in with both feet and give you 110%. So think about that as we're planning with individuals and families. Communication is really difficult. I've been in the back of courtrooms thousands of times now, and sometimes it's our body language. Sometimes it's the way we look at an individual when they are trying to talk. That is really important. Regardless of our thoughts, it is not our job to judge. That is what the judge is there for. And so I've seen professionals, and I will use quotes, professionals, roll their eyes based on what an individual is saying, smirk, kind of throw their head back in that way of saying, really? Yes, you may have those beliefs, and they may in fact be true. But if you're going to serve human beings, you have to be able to do it in a non-judgmental kind of way if you actually want to be effective.
Also, for those of us who serve the child serving systems, we could be one of those paces for that individual. This could be the first time that anybody has shown any support or positive interaction with that consumer, with that child, with that family. It may be you. You don't get to choose that. That's part of your role. So using that kindness approach in comparison to the demand approach can sometimes serve wonders. And I found it really interesting when you said about in the planning component, because I have been in the field a while, and I remember a time when we wrote the plan and we told you what it was. And I think we've come a long way and still have a long way to go. But really, how we work side by side with the families, the consumers, the clients, and the other professionals in creating a plan that will work for everyone and has a focus on the goal that the client or consumer is driven to be motivated by. We may want a person to stop using a substance, and we know that that is what is in their best interest, but they can't think there yet. They're not ready for that. We have to figure out together with the other team members, whether that's supports for that client or consumer or other professionals, how can we together get there by doing this other thing that the consumer will buy into? And I think it's really important that the way that we approach those conversations can certainly make or break. I've heard so many people say, well, they were just obstinate and didn't want to hear anything I had to say. Okay, can we reflect as professionals on how we interact with that individual? Can we step back and look, from an outsider's viewpoint? Is there a way we could do things differently in the future that might promote that relationship to move forward?
And April, based on what you were saying, it reminded me when we did this training for 1,200 teachers and support staff. It was a very large group. We were in 2 locations at the same day on the same time, presenting to 600 people in an auditorium setting. And one of the things that stuck out to me that day is really kind-hearted people in the teaching profession that were really there to teach and help and support every student in their classroom. But one of the things they used as an example, I remember one teacher in particular, she would regularly go up to the students who were struggling and she would touch their shoulder. And for me, when I was a student, particularly a young student, when teachers did that to me, it felt like they were hitting me. And obviously they were not. They were just touching lightly on my shoulder as a gesture of support. But if you have, the way this was described to me one time, and I love the way it was described, if you are emotionally sunburnt, even the slightest touch with the kindest of intentions on somebody's shoulder without permission feels like you are smacking people with sunburn. And so I would just ask us to keep in mind that it's really important that we pay attention to those areas of physical contact and not touch someone's shoulder, for example, or their arm without asking permission. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about those situations in the criminal justice system that sometimes need to happen incident to arrest. I'm certainly not telling you to ask permission, but I am asking that you would give clear direction as you do, as normal procedure.
I had run into an issue in previous work similar to the touching, where you're saying that it can be misconstrued in an inappropriate manner as well because of an individual's trauma history and abuse and neglect, in that they may take something as being sexually inappropriate when it was not intended to be in that manner at all. But that was the experience that they had had earlier in their life. And so really just getting to know individuals and understanding where they're coming from. Not that we would ask those questions, but just making sure that we know what we're doing and how we're doing it.
So I'd like to pause a second because I feel like we've been talking a lot. So any comments or questions from anybody on the call here? Come on, we're a pretty small group. Let's go out on the limb. I'll catch you, I promise. Yeah, Darlene. I think you're still muted. There we go. Great.
I had sat in with a number of other Pennsylvania Prison Society volunteers and staff of the Dauphin County Prison Board meeting yesterday. And I heard some really uncomfortable things related to prisoners being hurt by guards, either through physical interactions or how they were looking and acting toward the inmate. And I know that there is an intention that the correction officers will have this kind of training. I'm just wondering how many have been at this time, and I think the next training doesn't come up until the summer. It just seems like a long time. Is there a way that more of the corrections officers could have such training? That's my question.
Randy, is it okay if I jump in on this one?
Sure, and then I'll certainly chime in.
Okay. Yeah, Darlene, I was part of the call yesterday, as well as on the line. The training for officers and criminal justice folks in general, certainly the pandemic has disrupted that. That's one of the reasons we are trying to connect with folks through mediums like this, technical difficulties and all. We're trying to make sure folks have the opportunity to get some additional trainings specific to the officers. On trauma, we are looking to be able to develop or put together some kind of training for folks. I know there have been some corrections officers trained in crisis intervention training, the CIT training. That was one of the trainings, I believe Dr. Yinger had to hop off the line, that was mentioned yesterday as focusing a bit on de-escalation techniques and you do learn a little bit about trauma in that training. It's not certainly as much as we would get through this session and some other more intense trainings like what SAMHSA provided us for criminal justice folks, but it is definitely something that helps learn those techniques. So the policies of the jail, incorporating those trainings into other criminal justice professionals, we are actively working on that, and certainly with the CIT training specifically, we're hosting at least 2 more in the early spring next year, and maybe like mid-spring, like May, June-ish, so maybe early summer. So we'll have at least 2 more of those trainings that will be put on primarily for officers, but the correction officers often have the opportunity to attend as well. So it's a matter of balancing getting officers available in to receive that training and having the support of the prison in that process. And I'm certain, based on what I heard on the call yesterday, they'll continue to address what was discussed. And if there need to be changes or more intense supports and trainings offered, I'm sure that those will be reviewed. But I did just want to pop in because I'm not sure everyone on the line today was on that call. So sorry, Randy, I don't know if you want to add anything or.
Yeah, no, I certainly wasn't on the call, but I would just say in my experience, this training that we're doing today is really designed for the broad community, and that includes everyone. For folks within law enforcement, which is why we have the CIT training, and certainly I would include officers at our prison, or quite frankly, any prison system, I think the training must be tailored to their work and their procedures. So I think it's this kind of community-based training is valuable to everyone, and it's certainly available. I just think reading into a little bit of what you were concerned about, Darlene, and what you heard, I would certainly think that a more specific training geared towards their needs would be an appropriate place to start.
Thank you.
Catherine, how about you scooch on to the next slide, please? I just want to share some of our local data with the group. This is as of October 8th of 2019. We have done very, very little during the pandemic because of some of the technical challenges, as you all have experienced today. So, but I do want to share this data. So this was out of 1,808 individuals that we presented to over the years. And we didn't even start this until 2017. I think it was December of 2017. So this is about 2 years and a few months. And this is our Dauphin County data as it's compared to the original ACE study and the Philadelphia study. So what's alarming to me, well, there's several things. The first thing is the original study, which, was in California with folks who all had health insurance, 17,000 people. 48% of those individuals had a score of 0. If you look at Philadelphia and Dauphin County, we're not near 48%. We're at 30 and 32% of the folks surveyed reported 0 ACE scores. That's much, much lower. So if I think about that in the context of health outcomes, we are already in need of more solutions, for more solutions or PACEs, if you will, those positive experiences, not only for our children, but to Devin's point earlier, for the adults, parents, everybody who we serve in our adult service systems as well. So then you go to folks with an ACE score of 1 to 3, 1, 2, or 3. We're that tealy color. We're at 44%. The original study was at 45%. Philadelphia is at 48%. Those are pretty close numbers as we look at the data. And then if you jump over to those individuals who are reporting 4 or more ACEs, this is what is most frightening to me, because the original study, only 7% of the people surveyed had an ACE score of 4 or more. In Dauphin County, we're at 23%, and in Philadelphia, they're at 22%. So we really have our work cut out for us, and that's why being informed about ACEs and the impact on the human brain is really critical, because if we're going to be effective, we need to have an understanding, or a different understanding, of what we know about development today. Any questions about our data? We still collect data. I will tell you that I reported earlier, we've presented to about 2,500 individuals. That is absolutely true. Some people choose not to share their ACE score, which is perfectly fine. It is not a requirement. We just want folks to have an opportunity to understand themselves and the folks that they're serving. And then the other part of that is we do presentations to first-year medical students with our friends down at the Penn State Hershey Medical Center College of Medicine. And because those students are generally not from Dauphin County, they are here, thankfully, learning to be great physicians. We have separated their data, because what we learned early on when we started doing this annually for them is that their experience has absolutely impacted our data, because they have not had very many ACE scores at all. Now, that's certainly not everyone. There have been a few with high ACE scores, but their scores were impacting our typical citizen data. So we took those out, and we do calculate those separately. But we talk about that when we present to them, because as medical students who are going to be serving a variety of populations in their future careers in medicine, it's important for them to understand that their experience may be drastically different than the people they're serving. I'm gonna ask for the next slide and turn it over to April.
Sorry, I was having a difficult time with the mute button. So I think the goal, as kind of displayed by this rubber band in the picture, is that to bend and not break. And we talked about PACEs being one of the opportunities that help to build the skills that individuals need in order to be successful and to have the less depressive episodes or mental health conditions, are less likely to abuse substances, etc. And these childhood and adolescent experiences are connected to improved mental health. What we also know is that it's not necessarily ever too late to build the resilience. If we can hit that in the first 6 years of life, the likelihood of success is tremendous. But that doesn't mean that we give up and we don't keep trying to build this skill in the older adolescents that we serve, in the 18 to 24 population that are in all of our worlds very, very difficult to reach for many factors, or for the adults that we come into contact with, or even in the case Randy was earlier discussing with the older adult population that we've been kind of connecting with more recently. So the next step is building resilience. We've learned that individuals have ACEs. We need to know, how can we set them up for success? And what can we do as professionals to help support them through that? And I think we talked a good bit about the way that we interact with those folks. That's fine, Catherine, you can go. How we interact with those folks. And so this is just a quote. No matter the source of the hardship, the single most common factor for children who end up doing well is having the support of at least one stable and committed relationship with a parent, caregiver, or other adult. And the great thing is that we already knew that, and we could tell you that because we could see it in the interactions that we've had in our professional careers. But now there are scientific studies that the fact that childhood adversity can in fact be impacted by the PACEs, impacted by just one individual, preferably two, who are in their lives, who are there to support them, that they can trust, to count on, to share their feelings, to share their emotions, and is going to be there for them no matter what. So again, as I kind of said a few minutes ago when we were talking, that could be you. That could be you. That's that factor for this person. You may be the most stable person in that individual's life, even if that means you are the person who provides that strict structure that they didn't otherwise have. Because actually, believe it or not, children need that authoritative parenting style. However, it's supposed to also come with the love and the acceptance. And so you may be, in your role, that person who provides that strict structure as well as love and acceptance, and not love in the way that we think of it from a parent to child or a partner, but love in the way that we think that when things go wrong, we will help to pick you up and support you so that you can become more successful. What other kind of thoughts do you all have about building resilience in children?
I would also ask us to consider how we can build resilience within our adults.
One of the things I read recently was that things like sports actually can really have positive impact on them. And so I think, you know, certainly pandemic has impacted our ability to be engaged in those types of activities, but, you know, helping to encourage individuals to be involved in some kind of group activity, even if it is in a virtual format, whether that's a sport or chess club or something of those natures, those really can provide some structure and some support as well for kids and adults. Honestly, we've all been kind of faced with, I think Randy talked about COVID-19 being particularly, we added that just now, but we've all been faced with doing things differently. And some of us may have faced some depressive episodes associated with the change in our interaction with our closest family members or friends, or even the professionals that, you know, Randy and I are both sitting here doing this with two walls separating us so that we can do this appropriately. Normally we're together doing this and we're bouncing ideas back and forth off of each other. So it really has impacted all of us. So I'm interested to hear, in your professional roles, what do you think about resilience with the children and adults that you work with?
Randy and April, it's Meredith. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say that I think it's been very difficult for everybody in this time, but as I see how difficult it is, it's also been humbling to watch how everybody tries to pull together and work together. And that's what I choose to try to look at and to post to try to get me through this, and just to keep going, because that's all we can do. And to understand that everybody's not 100% right now. And if we were 100%, something's seriously wrong, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and, you know, each of us have our own lives. We watch our staff have their own lives. And we just have to do our best and be caring and giving and help each other through this right now.
I absolutely agree. And,
So,
you know, I was talking to an official earlier this week, and, you know, the first question was, how's everything going? You know, in terms of human services. And my glass is always half full. So I'm talking about, you know, this is going well, and this is going well, and this is going well. And here are the few things that are difficult right now. But it was funny because they said to me, well, you know, I'm a person of not just is the glass half full, I'm just happy to have a glass, right? So it's not about whether it's full or empty, I'm just happy to have a glass.
That's right. You're exactly right.
Yep.
I think we just really need to make sure that we're coming at it with our consumers to the same level of understanding that we are with the staff that we work with at this time, because, you know, you mentioned, Meredith, that we have to recognize not everybody's at 100%. And I think it's the same in the community. You know, they don't have the security and the structure already, and now we've thrown another adverse childhood experience into the mix, or adverse adult experience, as it were, that might be bringing up some concerns of something that may have also happened in their past. Randy talked earlier, and I put in the chat box, if there's something that comes up from your past that you feel like you really need to talk about, you know, we can arrange a telephone call. And I think this could be doing that same thing for the community's members that we serve, and we just don't have any idea. So taking some extra time to be more cautious, not only because of our physical health, you know, gloves and gowns and masks and whatnot, but also our emotional health. And, you know, it really comes out through the lifespan. So it's not like, because this happened to me when I'm 8, I'm going to experience it when I'm 14, and that's a guarantee. I may not experience it until I'm 84, and something happens that makes me kind of remember and share and show these things. So the brain part of it is very different than the emotional and behavioral ways that things come out.
I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, the interactions that I've had with community members and the people, our clients, you know, some of the things I'm seeing are, you know, they're talking to me on the phone. I can hear panic coming through the phone. I can hear breathlessness, and I'm like, it's going to be okay. Calm down, take a breath, tell me what's going on. So, you know, having just to be that sounding board, because in their world, they're coming to us for support and guidance. And that's A, not easy for them to do, and B, they're, so to speak, we're like their parent, and they're looking for a good, solid answer from us. And absolutely. So yeah, I've definitely experienced that. I've seen that, and it kind of goes whole round in that I feel better that I'm able just to give someone that little bit of peace or that little bit of understanding in this chaos that we're living in right now.
Meredith, I think your comments and your insight are a perfect way to wrap this session up. And please know, for those of you who have not seen the film or want to see it again, we will figure this out. It won't be today, but we will figure this out, and we're going to do it together. And we will have, once we figure it out, we'll send out information specifically to everybody who registered so that we can show you the film. And April and I are happy to make those arrangements to have that discussion after the film. The CDC has some specific information about ACEs, so Catherine has kindly put up their website. And again, thank you for your time this afternoon. And I apologize for the video challenges, but we'll figure it out. Catherine?
Yes, thank you, everyone. And you know, we talked a lot about today about the idea of resilience and having the right supports in place to kind of keep moving forward, even if something goes a bit awry. Even the best well-laid planned and best tested plans, apparently there can still sometimes be bumps in the road. So I appreciate everybody that came today, that was you know, asking questions and participating while we worked through some of those things, or attempted to. And we will address the sound issue and make sure folks have the opportunity to see the video. This is part 1 of the discussion on trauma. Obviously, we'll have this video piece resolved, but we are going to have another Criminal Justice Connect webinar in January that will look at more of the experiences in the criminal justice system specifically. We're still working out a little bit of the details, but we may have some folks who've previously been through the justice system speak about their experiences, and to hear more from their perspective, what was maybe considered traumatic to them, and how they have moved forward or how they have struggled. And what could potentially impact that person and support that person moving forward. So as the system is looking at this as trauma in general, those are the kind of conversations we're starting to have to learn more about what we can do, you know, to build resilience and help people move forward. So I appreciate everybody's time today. Again, apologies for the technical glitch with the movie, and we'll get a date set that everyone will be available, hopefully available to see the session. So with that.
Catherine, I would also say, let's try to get this video rescheduled a couple times, maybe even in December, because that way folks will have a chance to see the video before the part 2 of your trauma series.
Yes, I will get some dates together, and after reviewing what went awry with the sound today, it did work. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Take care.